Alright, so moving on to some examples here. So here, number 1, we're given that f of x is equal to x squared, and g of x there is equal to 4x minus 4. And here we need to determine h of x, which we're taking the difference of f and g of x. So what we're going to do is we're going to take f of x, so h of x is equal to, so the f of x is x squared, subtract, that'll be in brackets, that'll be 4x minus 4, so that's our g of x function there. And what we're left with is h of x is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 4. Alright. So from there we're going to sketch all three functions. So we're going to sketch f of x, g of x, and h of x. And we'll do this all on the same coordinate axis there. And so we're going to use our nice little handy dandy trick. So we're just going to graph f of x and g of x, and then we're just going to use our little trick about how to graph h of x, okay? So f of x, which is equal to x squared. We're going to draw our table values, or if you guys know, x squared is a fairly decent, pretty easy graph there to do. So we're just going to pick our usual values. We have -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And if you guys feel pretty confident, you guys can actually do this into your graphing calculators, but if you want to, for h of x, try doing that one on your own. That way you can get that little practice about trying out our little trick about graphing h of x. So first one there we have x is equal to -2, and -2 squared is 4. -1 squared is 1. 0 squared is 0. 1 is 1. And 2 squared is 4. And now we're going to do g of x, and g of x there was 4x minus 4. So we had x and y there. And we're going to pick our, we can do some nice values there. We can do, this one here is linear, so we don't need to go into too much depth, but it would be nice to have some overlap so we can see our h of x values. So let's do the same values. So we have -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And -2, so be 4 times -2 is -8, minus 4 is -12. -4, so be 4 times -1 is -4, subtract 4 is -8. 4 times 0 is 0, so 0 minus 4 is -4. 4 times 1 is 4, so 4 minus 4 there is 0. And 4 times 2 is 8, so 8 minus 4 is +4 there. And if you notice this linear, it follows that nice pattern there, so we know that we're going in the right direction. Alright, and so to graph h of x, if you want to, we can create a table of values for h of x. Just going to do a little one there so we have some room there. So we have x and y. And so our x value stays the same, so we have -2. And here we are subtracting f of x and g of x. So you take your y value in f of x, subtract your second y value, so it'd be 4, subtract -12, so it'd be 4 plus 12, which is 16. Then we have -1. So here we had 1, subtract -8, so it'd be 1 plus 8, which is 9. Then we had x is equal to 0, so it'd be 0, subtract -4, so 0 plus 4 is 4. Then when x is equal to 1, we have 1, subtract 0, which is just 1. And for x is equal to 2, we had 4 subtract 4, which is 0. Okay. So I'm going to graph f of x. I'm going to switch some colors here. Hopefully we can have a nice pretty graph. And so f of x here, we have x squared. So looking at our values, we need to go up to a whopping 16. Wow. So actually what I'm going to do is every second tick mark will be 3. We're not going to get quite 16 on there, but we can sure approximate it. It's going to be barely off the graph, so I think that's absolutely reasonable to do. So we have 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. -3, -6, -9, -12, -15 there. And our x values just range from 0 to, or -2 to 2, so we can go with our usual values. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, Alright, so graphing f of x here, we have -2 and +4. And that'll probably be maybe around there. We have -1 and 1. We add 0 and 0. Then we add 1 and 1. Then we add 2 and 4. So connecting that to make our nice parabola there. And hopefully you guys will not have my shaky hand. I'm sure you guys are hopefully getting used to my shaky hand now. After how many units we've been graphing this for. So that right there is, we can just label this one as f of x. Now I'm going to quickly change color. And so I'm going to do g of x here in blue. So to start off there, we had -2 and -12. Then we had -1 and -8. We had 0 and -4. We had 1 and 0. And 2 and 4. Connecting that should hopefully create a nice straight line, and don't mind my nice shaky hands there. Alright, so hopefully it'll look like a nice straight line there. And we'll label that one, so remember, don't forget to label your graphs so I know which one is which. And this blue one here was g of x. And we switch colors again for h of x. So h of x I will do in green. So that is at -2 and +16, so that's about way up here. Then we had -1 and 9. We had 0 and 4. Then we had 1 and 0. Oh, sorry, 1 and 1. Then we had 2 and 0 there. Alright. And so if we combine that graph, we'll see what's going on there. Kind of looks like it's slowly rounding off, and if you guys notice here, we have a parabola here. And in our for h of x function there, we have x squared minus 4x plus 4. If you guys want to, we can do a couple more points there just to help us see that shape of that graph there. Hopefully you have not a shaky, wow, that was pretty bad on my part, not a shaky graph like that, but maybe let's try putting in one more point. Let's do x is equal to 3. We can even put this into our original function, just so we can get a little bit clearer of an idea of what on earth is going on here. So when we're putting in x is equal to 3, we have 3 squared, so we 9, subtract 4 times 3 is 12 plus 4. So we have 9 minus 12 is -3 plus 4 is equal to 1. So we're at 3 and 1 there. So you can kind of see it's starting to take that shape of that parabola, so we can kind of just assume it goes into that same pattern there. And then we'll label this as h of x. Okay? And so if you guys want to put this into your graphing calculators, you guys can double check this. Hopefully you guys have a nicer looking graph than my shaky hands here. So hopefully things will look a little bit nicer there. And you guys can even check. Try subtracting those points, which I guess we already did. And if you guys even try graphing this original function, x squared minus 4x plus 4, you should find that you'll get the exact same coordinates as we did in this work here. Okay? So there's two different ways to graph h of x. So you can take that function that we created up above, and you can also check, or you can also do it using your subtracting those two coordinates. One thing that you guys can do is, you know, graph h of x here, this function that we determined up top here, and then you can check it. Try subtracting those points. If you subtract those points and you get wherever it is on that green line here, if that's correct, they should all match up, and that's a good way to check your work. Okay? And so let's talk about here, let's talk about this domain and the range. And so here our domain, we'll just do this one for h of x, so our domain. And we have x such that, and if you guys notice here, your x can be anything. So x is an element of all real numbers, and if you notice that overlap there, x can be an element of all real numbers for both of these graphs, so that's their overlap. So x is an element of all real numbers. And the range here, we have, you notice that y can touch 0 but never goes below it. We kind of saw that by using our table of values there. So we can say that y, such that y must be greater than or equal to 0, where y is an element of all real numbers. Okay? You guys should hopefully have lots of practice with the domain and range. We've been doing this for a really long time in this course, and you guys have done this previously before, so hopefully that makes a bit of sense there, okay? So there's some ideas about graphing h of x there, okay? So here for our second example, we need to use the graphs of f of x and g of x to sketch the graph of h of x. And so this one here, we are adding the two functions f and g of x. So this one we're just going to take those coordinates and we're going to add them together. So one thing that we'll notice here is that these are both lines, and so when we add them together, they're also going to create a linear function. So in theory, we only really need 2 points, because you'll need 2 points to sketch a line, but maybe we can go with maybe even 3 or 4 just to double check to make sure that we're going along we're using those right points, okay? So for our first one here, let's look at, let's even go with this coordinate here. This one's nice and easy. Here we're at, for f of x, we're at -4 and 0. And for g of x, we're actually at that same coordinate. So your x value stays the same, so we are at -4. And 0 plus 0 is equal to 0. So that coordinate is actually right at that intersection point. Then your next point, you guys can choose any one. I'm just going to pick a few random ones. Our next one there could be, let's say, when x is equal to 0. So here we're at, for f of x, we're at 0 and 3. And for g of x, we're at 0 and -1. Adding those two together, we get 0 and 3, subtract 1, or 3 plus -1. That is equal to 2. So there we're at 0 and 2. So our graph's going to be right, that point is going to be right there. And just to be on the safe side, let's grab one more point, and if we want to, sure, let's grab when x is equal to 4. So for f of x there, we're at 4 and 6. And for g of x, we're at 4 and -2. So adding together your y values, we have the coordinate 4 and 6 plus -2, that is 4. So we're at 4 and 4. So when you guys connect that, that should create a nice straight line. And I'm going to apologize again, I'm probably going to have the world's most shakiest hands here. And it should look something like that. Sure, we'll go with it. Make sure you put your arrows on it. Use a ruler. I have shaky hands. I cannot obviously use a ruler here on Word. So this here is h of x. Okay, so make sure you graph it there. Okay, so to finish off, we have one more example here. And we're going to do this in video number 3. Okay, so hopefully making sense up to this point here. I think I've been talking my face off already here, so you can probably hear my voice is getting a little bit crackly, so I apologize for that. And so we'll finish off 10.1 in the next video.